approval to Pfizer's vaccine for COVID-19. And tonight, we are opening up the phone lines as we do, or you text us your message, we can post it here, and you can ask her any question. We are talking about the COVID-19. We have an expert. She is Dr. Gertie Jamika Anyawoki, and she's an infectious disease expert. Any question you have about COVID, the vaccines, she can answer it. Please welcome her to the show. Hello. We have to take you off of mute. There we go. How are you, doctor?
I am fine. Thank you for having me.
I am very, very excited. And I know that you have a presentation. I have so many questions for you. And I know we only have 30 minutes, so I'm going to get right into it. Let's learn a little bit about your medical background, and then let's talk about COVID and this new vaccine that's been approved, full approval, that is.
Yes, hi. I went to medical school in Lagos, Nigeria, University of Lagos to be precise. I did my residency at New York Metropolitan Hospital, New York Medical College, and I did fellowship at North Shore University, Long Island Jewish Health Center with the NYU Medicine Program, fellowship for infectious disease over there. And I've been practicing in Louisiana for the past 13 years as an infectious disease consultant.
Now, Dr. Anyawoki, COVID, this is far from over. I mean, this is starting a new era with this Delta virus. Can you just once again, for us, our audience, define what COVID-19 is?
COVID-19 is a virus that's a simple organism. And it's a coronavirus which is new. It's not, coronaviruses have been known for hundreds of years, but this particular coronavirus is new. We've never seen this type before, exactly because its characteristics also are different. In the past, coronaviruses will cause things like catarrh, sneezing, and some aches and cold. But this particular virus has shown itself to be very hyper-inflammatory, and in that hyper-inflammatory setting, it causes a lot of damage to our blood vessels, so it can cause blood clots in every organ you can think about. And so some people get the COVID toe, which is like blue toe, blue-black, and some people get, blood clots in their lungs, in their brains, in their liver, you name any organ. So it's so far-reaching, and it depends on which organ you're getting this blood clot, the manifestation of that illness will show. Generally, it could make people very sick. As usual, a lot of viruses have a spectrum. Some people might get COVID and not really have much of a symptom, and some people might get COVID and actually have a stroke. So in that spectrum, we find ourselves, but it is shown itself to be highly virulent and can be deadly.
So in the medical world, you guys, are you really concerned about this and the lack of people being vaccinated?
Oh, it's a big concern, because vaccination is going to be one major way of getting out of this. If majority of us in the community vaccinate, the vaccination tends to protect us from the virus. And even when we get the infection, which is not that common, we also will have less symptoms.
Okay.
And that would mean less hospitalization, and that means less death. So it is necessary for majority of us to get vaccinated, and that is how we can protect a few of us that may not be able to get vaccinated for whatever reason.
So let me tell you, one of the questions that came in to me before we actually went live was, if you can be vaccinated and still pass on the COVID-19, they're saying, what's the purpose of getting it?
Oh, there is a good purpose. So you have to think about it this way. I usually give this analogy of seat belts. So we all know when we drive our car, there's a possibility that we can have accidents, but we don't have accidents every day. But if you have accident and you're wearing your seatbelt, it tends to help to minimize the impact on you, the driver.
Such that,
yes. So
yeah.
So when somebody bangs the back you don't flip out of the window. The seatbelt keeps you in place, and that you might feel some soreness,
Yeah,
but you will be alive. So
I like that
getting,
analogy.
yeah, getting the vaccine doesn't mean that, oh, you may not be able to get the virus at all. What it means is that even if you get the virus, the infection will be much milder than it will be if you did not get the vaccine, such that you you don't have severe illness in less hospitalization, and the risk of death is less.
Another question that came in, and this is one I've heard a lot of people talking about, and this is from a gentleman out of Georgia who has not been vaccinated, and he said, how long do mRNA spike proteins last in the body? And
Okay,
maybe you can define what the mRNA is for those who don't know.
so the mRNA is the messenger RNA, ribonucleic acid. So going back a little bit to biology, we have DNA, and the DNA can translate the RNA. And a lot of times, so we have a lot of proteins in our body. The messenger RNA is involved in production of those proteins. How the body sends the genetic material over is like it gives that messenger RNA an information. Okay, you take this, go over here, produce this kind of protein. And so when the messenger RNA gets there, it's like you want to go to an exam, you cram the information, you get into the exam, you vomit the information on the paper, and you're done. The messenger RNA gets scavenged out like other waste product. It's done its job. So
So
it
then it
doesn't
doesn't
last long
change
at
a
all.
person's mRNA. The vaccine does not change.
Your DNA, no, it doesn't. Why? Because if you look at the cell biology, and some of us did science or biology in school, and you look at the cell itself, you have the cell wall, you have the cell cytoplasm, and then you have the nucleus. The nucleus is where the DNA is contained, the genetic material. The messenger RNA never gets to the nucleus. It stays in the cell cytoplasm, where it uses the ribosomes that's in the cytoplasm and other enzymes to produce the spike protein that now allows our body to respond to that spike protein, producing antibodies against COVID. At no time does it get to your nucleus. So when it doesn't get to your nucleus, how can it now change your DNA? It's not possible. And it's been a lot of misinformation out there that needs to be corrected.
So what about this question? This one, when I got this in, I couldn't believe it. So I've read that people with more melanin normally have less spike proteins in their body. How will or could the increase affect people of color?
If people with more melanin, which all of us that are Black have more melanin,
Yes.
but if you notice when COVID first started, it affected a lot of Black people. I don't
Yes.
necessarily think that melanin is a factor here. What's
Okay.
a factor is other comorbidities. I found out that people that are obese tends to get the worst end of the stick.
Okay.
People with diabetes, hypertension, people that are older, maybe about 65, because their immune system is not as good as it should have been. And people with cancer, people with immunosuppressed conditions or taking immunosuppressed medications, those people have a higher risk. And if you come look at the Black community, we have a lot of these diseases. We have a lot of diabetes, hypertension, congestive heart failure. We have obesity. A lot of that will, affect us. And at the time when COVID started, it affected a lot of Black people because a lot of us were doing the direct service jobs. But melanin is not really a factor here.
So that's where the problem came in, because I believe that that's where people, whites, thought that it didn't affect them. And maybe the misinformation came that way, because it did seem like Blacks were being affected, and we're seeing, and then I think there was things with the president at the time that was like, listen, we're good.
Yeah, we would like to be good.
Right.
As at this time, we need to do what we need to do to protect ourselves and our families.
Well, I know that you put together a presentation we may not be able to get through, but some of the graphic things that you have here showing the cell, I'm going to have my producer pop this up, and I'm going to let you take this away, Dr. Gertie Chamika Anyanwoki.
Thank you. Thank you. So over here, it shows I'm the chair of the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas COVID-19 task force, and I represent them a lot in a lot of presentations I do. You can move to the next slide. So this is the virus itself, and I want people to understand that there are a lot of features on this virus that can be used to target drugs and vaccines. At this time, they have chosen to use the spike protein, which is this one right here.
Okay,
That
I see.
you see the spike on the virus. That's
Yes.
where they're getting because if you can target the spike protein and prevent the spike protein from getting into the cells, then you can prevent infection. Really, that's what the idea is for the vaccine. Move to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is the life cycle where it shows the ACE2 receptor. That's how the spike protein of the virus uses to attach to this receptor and gains entry into our cell. But when it gets into the cell, there's a lot of processes that goes on. There's replication. Here is an assembly where you're making the new virus, and it's like millions of these are being produced at any time. So the next one, please. So I would like to answer common vaccine questions in our community: why the hesitancy, if the vaccines work, safety, and if it's effective. Move to the next one, please. Okay, so the risk for COVID-19 infection and hospitalization and death by race and ethnicity, this has actually changed. It is now better. But even as it is better, you can still see that the minority communities tend to have more cases of COVID, more cases of hospitalization, more cases of death as compared to the white non-Hispanic persons. Next slide,
Wow.
please. So race ethnicity of people receiving a COVID vaccine in the US as of August 16, 2021, which is about 10 days ago. If you look at here on the right, the population of the US is about 61%. And if you look at over here, and the population of the white persons, non-Hispanic, about 61%. And if you look at the total people that have taken at least one dose of the vaccine, we have 58%. It used to be that you had I think about 50 something percent of white people had taken the vaccine at the beginning, and about 5.4% of Black people. Now we have about 10%. Well, in the normal population of the US, we have about 12% that are Black. So we're still a little behind. And the Hispanic is about 17%, and it's 17% of the normal population. So they're fine. But if you look at what has happened in the last 2 weeks, and I think it's because of this Delta variant, you have more of the minority communities. Look at the Black people, the Hispanic people getting more of the vaccine even than the white people. Next slide, please. So most unvaccinated adults say getting the vaccine is a bigger risk to their health than the coronavirus. I mean, if you look at here, you find out that a lot of the unvaccinated people, they'll tell you that getting the vaccine itself is the bigger problem. And amongst them, they are more worried about, their concern is the safety and the fact that the vaccine was produced so fast. Next slide, please. As for so there are a lot of reasons why people are hesitant. Some people, is what I just said about their concerns. Some people don't believe, they don't trust the government. Some other people are anti-vaxxers. Some people have perhaps, risk and history of allergies to other things, and they're just worried. But in the Black community, it's mainly because we don't trust the system. There's a lot of skepticism, there's a lot of hesitancy, because there has been in the past racism in medicine, in the healthcare and government policies. We know about the Tuskegee experiment of 1932, and we know about the Henrietta Lacks case. All these are the history in the Black community, and that's why even today in the present healthcare system, Black people don't feel that they are given equal treatment in the healthcare community. And so you can understand why a lot of Black people are hesitant and skeptical. Next slide, please. So there's been a lot of work that has been done on the messenger RNA vaccine. This doctor, Dr. Carrico, Kathleen Carrico, started working on this particular utilizing messenger RNA technology to combat disease about 30-something years ago. She tried at that time, I think in 1990, she made it to work in mice in the University of Wisconsin. The problem they encountered then was that synthetic RNA was unstable. And in
Okay.
that unstable state, it could lead to immune response with unintended risk to some patients.
This is a big deal because you just said this was started 30 years ago. And I think most people, Americans, were thinking you did this within weeks, and it's not the case.
Oh no, it's not the case. The technology started about 30 years ago, and at that time they were thinking of using it to combat diseases. Because, like I described before, messenger RNA, you send it to go a message, produce this protein, and then it's gone off and it's scavenged out. So they felt like utilizing that technology, you can correct a lot of diseases like diabetes, like hypertension, asthma, a lot of stuff that could be potentially used for. But it was so in 2005, they figured out how to solve the problem they found, which kind of delayed the work for 15 years. And
Okay.
so they were able to solve that problem by getting the lipid nano, like to wrap the messenger RNA in something to prevent it from disintegrating. So in 2020, what happened is that all that preparation of about 30 years met an opportunity during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Wow.
Next slide, please. This is Dr. Kizzy Colbert. She's part of the team of scientists in the NIH that worked on the Moderna vaccine. The reason I added her here is to show that Black people, people in the minority community have been part of this work. Even in our Nigeria, I'm originally from Nigeria. There's a lot of doctors that have Nigerian heritage that were part of this work. A lot of them I served in committee with that were investigators. So we are involved in it. It's not like somebody coming to tell us a story. If we didn't believe in it, we would not take it ourselves. Next slide, please. Okay, so vaccines work. And I just want you to see this big bubble over here. This is in 1950 Ireland. And the only difference between this 1950 and 2019 is that vaccination was introduced for measles. And you see the bubble is so small now.
Yes.
That is what vaccine does. Diphtheria, polio, they are all zero. And
Wow.
look at that. So that's why we know that vaccines work. Next slide, please. So how do they work? You give the messenger RNA for spike protein, you inject it in the muscle, and then it goes into the body, gets into the cell, and produces the spike protein. That spike protein now triggers the production of antibodies to that specific spike protein. So the next time you come in contact with COVID, your body is ready to fight it.
Wow.
Next slide, please. Remember the translation process I talked about earlier, where
Yes.
the DNA
Yes.
is translated into messenger RNA. So this messenger RNA is now translated into amino acids. I want you to watch here. Each of these codon is an amino acid. So you have each of these codon that forms these amino acids that now form a polypeptide chain that folds into protein. If you, in production of this is how mutations occur. Instead of having GUA here, it could change to GUU. And that amino acid is now different. And so when it forms that protein, that strain of the virus will be a different strain.
Oh my goodness.
And it could be consequential or it may not be consequential. And that is how we get these different variants that we're talking about. Next slide, please.
Your graphics are just amazing, by the way. It is so easy to put it together, even though I don't have a scientific background. So this is wonderful.
So some people ask if the process was rushed. Yes, it was. And that was because they had to accelerate it because the COVID-19 pandemic was really hitting the whole world, all the population. Everything was shut down. And so the governments had to come together, different parts of the world, different scientists. They had to put all their resources together. They had to put all their knowledge together to be able to combat this. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show a little bit of what happened. Normally, it might take about 10 years to produce a vaccine because that's all the processes they have to go through. The pharmaceutical industries have to spend their money. So they have to go through one phase because a lot of times this stuff may not work and they will waste all that money. So they want to do it stage by stage. But what happened is with all the previous knowledge that we have of coronaviruses that have been in existence for dozens and dozens of years, with the technology we had, they put the research and development process. Normally it would be here, take months. They just added it together with like trying the phase 1 of the trial. Phase 1 of the trial, usually what it's looking for is safety. is it safe to take this medication? Is it safe to give this vaccine to human beings? So once they had done that, because the animal studies would have been done with the research and development. So once they had done this phase 1 trial, they knew it was safe. So they got to go ahead from the government. It's like, okay, we're going to pump so much money. The pharmaceutical industries did not have to spend their money.
Yeah, we heard about that. That's when the government said they were going to support when Trump was in office, and he found the one that he wanted to back financially. And I think people were kind of puzzled about that because we never knew about that process before.
Yes. So because they put the money down, like, okay, we know the vaccine is safe. Okay, we don't know if it will work. Then we are ready to put this money down for you to start producing it. Just in case if it works, we don't have to wait for you to manufacture it. So they started manufacturing when they started the phase 2 trials. And so when they started phase 2 trials, shortly after they started phase 3 trials. And that phase is usually for you to watch out for efficacy and how the vaccine will actually work. So it's mainly safety and efficacy. The first phase is safety. Next slide, please. Again, this is what I just described in the above diagram, but in another form. Next slide. I just wanted to show that no corners were cut, and that usually large studies before COVID would be maybe 4,000 to 5,000 people. But are you looking at the numbers we have here? We had 37,000 for Pfizer before it was given the emergency use authorization. Moderna was 30,000, AstraZeneca 30, J&J was 60,000, and all of the others were thousands. These are not usual numbers in studies. Next slide, please. Okay, so minorities were included in this study. I've gotten a lot of people have asked me that question. About 10% of the people in the study were minorities. Remember, we're Black people. The total population of Black people in America is 12%.
Okay, that's a high number.
About 26% of the people were Hispanic and 8% were Asians. 51% of them were male, 49% were female. Next slide, please. Is the vaccine safe? As apparently, yes, because as of today, we have more than 5 billion shots that have been given worldwide. In the US, as of a couple of days ago, it was 363 million doses that have been administered. And so in those 360 something million doses that have been administered, I can't tell you how many people that would say have had such deleterious effect leading to death. But we know that we have about 37 million cases of COVID in America reported since last year. And we've had 600 and something thousand deaths from those 37 million cases. So you can see that the vaccines are really safe in taking care of us. Next slide, please. Okay, this is what I was explaining earlier on about the DNA. Yes. So if you look at this cell, this is the cytoplasm, this is the cell membrane, this is the nucleus, this is the ribosome. You give the injection, it gets in here, the messenger RNA comes here, uses these ribosomes and other enzymes right here in the cell cytoplasm to produce the spike protein that now stimulates our immune system to produce antibodies. At no time does it get to the nucleus. The nucleus is where our DNA is. And so if it didn't get there, it cannot affect the DNA. A lot of things that I've heard, sometimes I'm surprised, like shocked, where did that come from? So this is the explanation of it. It cannot affect or change your DNA because it doesn't even get to your nucleus. Next slide. Okay, so I talked about lipid nanoparticles before. These are very tiny fat molecules, fat bubbles that are used to enclose the messenger RNA. Okay. And that technology is called the hydrogel nanotechnology to deliver the messenger RNA vaccine. It is not microchips. Just because you use nanotechnology to make microchips does not mean that the hydrogel nanotechnology is now microchips that they put.
So that's where the thing where people are saying you're being followed and they're tracking you.
So yeah, they think that they put that chip and that the government is tracking you. There's another, and this is a misinformation totally, because this is not true. There's another slide I'm going to show about the Pfizer. Please, next slide, please. Yeah, so I don't know if people can see this very well, but this is how Pfizer packaged the vaccine. So they put the vaccine in these boxes and then put this box in a bigger box, and then this bigger box in dry ice to keep the temperature, because it needed ultra low temperatures to keep it from getting bad. And then they put a thermometer in that dry ice, and this thermometer had a tracking device to know where this package is at every time. At no time was the tracking device inside the vaccine itself. It was just put in the dry ice to know the temperature of the package and to track the package itself. So it's not tracking us as in the vaccine itself. Next slide.
That's a pretty good safety thing to know where it is and if the temperature at any point drops below what you guys require it to stay safe.
Exactly. And so I've heard of people talk about 666 mark of the beast. That's not true. There's nothing, it has nothing to do with the COVID-19 vaccine. It's just unfortunate that some people have been peddling this misinformation and inducing fear amongst members of our communities. Next slide, please. So there are side effects to the COVID vaccine: soreness in the arm, pain, swelling. Some people might have fever, chills, body ache, headache. A lot of us take Tylenol or ibuprofen or talk to your doctor for your specific case. But a lot of times you drink plenty of fluids, wear light clothing. These are things that are uncomfortable, yes, but they last a day or two and it's done with. It's far better than getting COVID itself, because in getting COVID, there's the risk of getting the long COVID, which is the post-COVID syndrome.
Yes.
Where people,
yes.
I've in clinic today, I attended to patients that are suffering from this as a result of the fact that they got COVID, they're short of breath, they still have memory fog and all that. I would rather take the vaccine, have those mild symptoms, in fact, when I had the symptom, I took ibuprofen and I was fine within an hour. So that's what I will advise people to do. Yes, it might be a little uncomfortable. Now, next slide. Are there serious side effects? They are rare but possible. Like penicillin, I am an infectious disease doctor. I give people penicillin. Some people have bad allergies to penicillin. Some people have allergies to crawfish. Some people have allergies to seafood. That's something that is known for. And they carry epinephrine. If you give them epinephrine, most of them are fine. And so, but if you have such allergy, you can discuss with your doctor. I have patients who have allergy issues. What I do is I prep them before they go in, and none of them have had any issues with the vaccine. Next slide, please. Okay. Is it safe for me to get a COVID-19 vaccine if I would like to have a baby one day? Yes. The vaccine,
that's a big one.
Yeah. People who want to get pregnant in the future may receive the COVID-19 vaccine. There is absolutely no evidence that antibodies formed from COVID-19 vaccination cause any problems with pregnancy, whether male or female. There's no fertility issues here. And in addition, I don't know of any evidence suggesting that fertility problems are side effect of any vaccine, not just COVID vaccine. Okay. So I know people were peddling that, but that's not true. Next slide, please. Will the vaccine make me sick with COVID-19? No. Like I said, the messenger RNA vaccines are synthetic product. So they don't contain the vaccine. They cannot give you COVID. Thank you. Wow. I think I will stop there in case other people have questions.
And I do. This is a real important one. I know we have about 3 minutes left. You're listening now to Dr. Gertie Chamika Anyanwoke. She's an infectious expert doctor, and we are so excited to have her here because there's so many questions. And I'm telling you, you are checking out the box. People are texting me and saying, "Geez, I wanted to know about that. I heard that too." This is a really good one. This person said that they contracted COVID-19. They've now been cleared of it, but how long do they have to wait to get the vaccine?
So if it depends on if the person got monoclonal antibody or got some plasma transfusion, because those ones have antibodies. If they got that monoclonal antibody, they have to wait for 90 days before they can get the vaccine. If they did not get the monoclonal antibody, I would advise maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks after they recover, they can go get the shot.
And so if you get COVID, is it possible you can get it again? And
I mean, absolutely. I have had patients who had COVID 4 times since last year. 4 times. And my patient, one that had COVID back to back, had COVID end of November, had COVID beginning of January.
So that makes, I would think if a person wasn't getting vaccinated and they say, "Oh, I've had it 3 times. I'm strong enough." I hear so many people saying, "I'm strong enough to fight this virus," and it's beyond that, right?
It's beyond that. So the truth is that some diseases, when you actually have the disease and produce natural immunity, it may work better than the vaccine. Also, there are other diseases where when you get the vaccine gives you a more stronger immunity than the disease. When COVID first started, we weren't too sure. But right now, the data is amassing that the vaccine actually might be a little better than the natural immunity, because we're seeing a lot of people who got the vaccine, who got COVID multiple times, and are still getting COVID. I just had a patient last week who had COVID, had COVID a few times, ended up in hospital with bilateral, both pneumonias, still got COVID. And so a lot of times there are risk factors also, counts. I'm not saying that natural immunity doesn't give any protection at all, but I think it is advisable, if you can, get the vaccine.
And so lastly, I have to ask you, what are your thoughts about who should get the booster shot and if it even should be given out?
Okay, so I think that the booster shots will be necessary, especially for the immunocompromised, but maybe for all of us or majority of us eventually, depending on when you got your second dose. It's unfortunate that a lot of people outside America and in third world countries have not even gotten the first shot. And here we are, we have gotten the second shot and we're about to get the third shot. That's just food for thought. And so we should consider how lucky we are that we're here and that we can get this. And so when you see people saying, no, I don't want to get it for whatever reason, consider the fact that there are a lot of people, millions of people in the world that cannot even get the first shot.
Dr. Gertie Chamika Anyanwoki, you are phenomenal, and I have enjoyed this conversation. My phone is going crazy here, so hopefully it wasn't coming through on the microphone. I look forward to talking to you at the first of the year and seeing where we are as a country and as a world as it pertains to really combating COVID-19. I can't thank you enough. And any closing words to people either who have the vaccine or those who are thinking about taking the vaccine?
So my closing word would be that you look at your risk and you look at your benefits. The risk of getting COVID is real. And in getting COVID, you can end up having the post-COVID syndrome, which I have a friend who had COVID in May last year, still having memory issues, having headaches, having shortness of breath. Think about protecting yourself, protecting your family, protecting your community, if you don't want to do it for yourself. And so I ask people to get their information from the CDC instead of all these social media people that are giving you information that may not necessarily be true or have truths. I found a lot of misinformation is out there and even disinformation. So please go to the right source. You can trust the CDC. The CDC has no reason why it should lie to its population.
Dr. Gertie Chamika Anyanwoki, you are phenomenal. Again, thank you so much for joining the show. We went over, I'm sorry, I know this was great. I could talk to her for hours. Again, I want to thank you for coming on the show and giving us factual information. She's an infectious disease expert. She knows what she's talking about. So I wanted to make sure you heard it directly from her. And thank you so much for that visual presentation. All right, next week, we are going to Croatia. So make sure you join us right here at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Again, God bless and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.